Лузі червона калина похилилася, чогось наша славна Україна зажурилася, а ми тую червону калину піднімемо.
We stand for the right of people to live free of tyranny, but we stand for the defense of democracy.
We will stand by Ukraine for as long as it takes.
The European Union stands with Ukraine and its people. We will continue to support them.
Our support is never going to waver.
You stop the war and President Zelensky will not take the floor.
Чогось наша славна Україна зажурилася, а ми тую червону калину піднімемо, а ми нашу славну Україну, гей, гей, розвеселимо.
Excellencies, dear friends, let me first tell you how grateful I am to all of you for your presence and how particularly humbled I am to extend a special welcome to Tirana to our guest of honor, His Excellency President Volodymyr Zelensky of the Republic of Ukraine. Honorable President, dearest friend, we are deeply honored that you have made this trip to Tirana amid the vast responsibilities of leading not just your nation and your people, but the entirety of our democratic world in resisting the war that has been so cruelly inflicted on your country, but in the meantime has so brutally challenged our democratic world. This is a war nor Ukraine and either our like-minded community of nations did choose. A calamity created by the choice and design of just one man, guided by the old dream of an imperial past. Your presence here is also a reminder that he has failed, that despite all its military might and all its toxic propaganda, neo-imperialist Russia has failed to topple Ukraine's democratically elected government. It has failed to crush the will of the Ukrainian people to live in a free, independent, and democratic homeland. It has failed to suppress the truth. The contrast could not be more striking. Vladimir Putin wanted to wipe Ukraine from the map in a matter of days. Today, Ukraine is more than ever anchored in Europe, and I believe more confident than ever in its European destiny. I look around the table and I see familiar and friendly faces. After a long history of wars, conflicts, and frozen relations, all of us here in the Western Balkans have getting together for at least a decade to meet and to talk about our challenges and to plan our futures, despite whatever we still might not disagree about. Together we look forward rather than back on the brutal history of bloody divisions that held us hostage for so many generations. The future that we in Albania see is a shared future, where we live in peace with our neighbors, where we work in cooperation with our partners, and stand in friendship with the world. Your presence here, Mr. President, calls us to recognize something of great importance, that the same hope that has brought us together over the years now also brings us together with the people of Ukraine. We have just marked the grim second anniversary of Russia's full-scale assault on Ukraine and on its capital, Kyiv, and we are here to renew our solidarity with and support for Ukraine and its people. To you, Mr. President, and to all those in Ukraine who are suffering today. We want also to renew our call on Russia to stop this war. And we want to renew our commitment to peace, a just peace, based on the United Nations Charter, international law, and UN General Assembly resolutions. A peace that respects Ukraine and its rights. We gather here to reaffirm that we remain united in our response. We stand resolutely with Ukraine in the face of a threat, a very real threat, to Europe's security and to global order. We are also aware of our own limitations. I tell times and again to my dear friend, the President of Ukraine, how much aware we are. We do not ourselves have the capacity to offer the levels of military or financial support that Ukraine needs to properly defend itself and its people. So let me ask everyone here to join me in calling upon the biggest and the richest members of our democratic community to recognize their role. The survival of Ukraine as a free, independent and democratic state, and as bastion of freedom of Europe as a whole, is dependent on the support, financial and military, that they first and foremost provide. This support must not be hostage to short-sighted domestic politics or to bureaucratic delays. And make no mistake, Ukraine is fighting not just for itself, but for all we believe in and we stand and work for. There are some cynical opportunists who claim that helping Ukraine resist an occupying army obstructs the cause of peace. To them, I want to say today that the way to end the fight is not to disarm the victim, but to make the perpetrator stop his aggression. Rewarding an aggressor who seized the territory of a sovereign country by disarming the aggressed does not bring peace. It sets the stage for more war. And stopping Ukraine, instead of stopping Vladimir Putin, it turns the peace based on reward for aggression in a legitimized base for further aggressions, and it turns our world in a place ruled by might, not by rights. Colleagues and friends, we know all too well that our region and our continent are no strangers to wars and their disastrous consequences. Europe, as we know it, only emerged after two terrible world wars of the last century. And in our region, even after more than a quarter of a century, the deep wounds left by the violent disintegration of the former Yugoslavia, the last dictatorship in our common Europe, still need healing. But we have also seen peace building, reflected most of all in the vision, the unparalleled wisdom and courage and the hard work that led to the creation of development for the European Union. The vision that led to the creation of the EU now guides us in the Western Balkans on our path to the future. A future we can reach only in peace by standing and working together and by solving our differences peacefully, constructively, in the name of the further future generations. Unfortunately, all of that is now in danger because the rules-based international order is being challenged, because power relations have become power confrontations, because long-known appetites for domination are being stirred up. All this is generating fear and an acute sense of instability. We cannot and must not fall for it. We have only one choice. We must collectively resist the forces who seek to undo what we have painstakingly built together. We cannot be naive or imprudent and bet our future on unhinged desires. We must continue, all of us in the Western Balkans, stay together, mobilize all our capabilities and resources, reinforce our ties, what binds us together, our institutions and organizations, strengthen our democracies, and do everything we can to not let aggression be rewarded. We cannot and must not let Russia win and Ukraine lose. Such an outcome would be unbearable. The entire European project, including the existence of the European Union, will be in jeopardy. Our common dreams for a future of peace and prosperity will be brought to the brink of a far, far darker future, one that is almost too painful to even imagine. This is why we need to continue to support Ukraine's fight for freedom and dignity. The fight is for our own freedom and dignity too, and we should continue to advocate for peace, a just peace for Ukraine and its people. Albania has done what it can and will continue to do so. The joint declaration we signed today in support of Ukraine's Euro-Atlantic integration will further strengthen our relations and our resolve to continue to stand by Ukraine. And finally, for the many small nations that we are and do not want to become the food of Russian imperial hunger, we need absolute clarity about Ukraine. We need unwavering solidarity with Ukraine, and we need a common resolve to support Ukraine. Slava Ukraini. Thank you very much. The floor to you, Mr. President.
Thank you so much. Dear Prime Minister Rama, dear colleagues, dear friends. First of all, I would like to thank Prime Minister Rama for all your personal and Albania's support for Ukraine, both military and humanitarian, as well as political one. Thank you for organizing and hosting this summit. And this is the second time we meet in such format. Previously, we met in Athens and now in welcoming Tirana. Eddie, Mr. Prime Minister, I highly appreciate your hospitality and this opportunity to discuss altogether how we can strengthen our countries, regions, and the entire Europe. Everyone understands that now is the time when the path of Europe is being determined for at least several next generations, and we all want Europe to be a space where every nation determines its own destiny. And we have seen in the past how someone else tried to determine the fate of other nations, and this happened in the Balkans, in Eastern Europe, and in all other parts of Europe. Now, Putin wants to do exactly the same. All his hostility, everything he does and everything he wants to force other nations to do is an attempt to make the old dictates of how nations should exist and what they should agree or disagree with, to make it the new normal. So that's why it is important for all free nations, all of us, that Putin and his regime lose, because all his failures are our common security. Dear colleagues, our vision of Europe and life in all its regions is based on the principle of dignity, equal dignity of each country. And there must be no Europe of different dignities. When someone deserves security and peace while someone's struggle for peace is ignored, when someone deserves integration into unions and alliances and someone is supposed to stay behind and wait. We believe that respect for every nation, the equal right of nations to security and independent choice of their destiny should be universal principles. All through our cooperation, we can ensure this. Firstly, we believe that every nation in Europe which keeps the principles of the European and Euro-Atlantic communities and wants to be a member of these communities deserves full integration. Ukraine supports your countries on their integration path and is grateful for your support of our integration. The European Union and NATO have provided Europe with the longest and most reliable era of security and economic development, and we are all equally worthy of being a part of the European and Euro-Atlantic communities. Secondly, I am grateful to all the leaders and nations who have already supported our peace formula and joined the global efforts to implement it. The obvious advantage of the peace formula is that it is comprehensive, meaning that every aspect of the Russian war can be resolved through the points of the formula, and also that its nature is inclusive. Every leader and every state can prove themselves in the peace process, not only the so-called great powers, not only those who are traditionally active in diplomacy in Europe or elsewhere. And we want international law and global stability to be based on truly multilateral and transparent processes on the equality of nations. Just as everyone deserves peace, everyone can contribute to the restoration of peace. And I invite you all to take part in the first Global Peace Summit at the level of leaders to be held in Switzerland. Thirdly, defense. During all this war, during full-scale war, we proved that it is possible to withstand and overcome even an enemy that seemed to be one of the strongest in the world. Every nation can succeed in defense when different nations cooperate and people are motivated enough to be resilient. And we propose to combine and strengthen such our experience. We are proud that there are about 500 defense companies operating in Ukraine in different areas, and each of them adds strength, but it is not enough to win Putin. And we see the problems with supply of ammunition, which are affecting the situation on the battlefield. And we are interested in co-production with you and all our partners. Our governmental team will present the details, and we propose to hold a special Ukrainian Balkans Defense Industry Forum in Kyiv or in one of your capitals. And I'm grateful for the joint work between our countries on roads and ports, railways and at sea, and together with defense packages, macro-financial and political support, the interaction between us, between neighbors, between neighboring regions, between all partners, has become a factor that, along with the resilience of our people in Ukraine, does not allow Putin to prevail. And I would also like to emphasize our joint work in the Black Sea and the Danube region for the sake of food security. It helps the whole world. We must continue to develop our good neighborly relations in logistics and in infrastructure, in trade and energy relations, in politics, in countering Russian disinformation and Russian attempts to destabilize our political systems. Everything that makes us good partners also makes Putin weaker. That is why he invests so much in divisions and crises. He knows exactly what serves his interests, and we must see exactly what works for our interests, and that the way we will all be protected, I'm sure. Thank you for attention. Thank you for invitation, Prime Minister. Slava Ukraini. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to the media for having followed this. And now we continue with our session. With the permission of all my friends and colleagues in the Western Balkans, I would like to first give the floor to the President